So I'm making a distinction between the work I do for other people and the work I do for myself. So around the time of 2002, I printed my first Massive Swerve book. Massive Swerve is kind of my brand, like Mad Magazine is a brand. So everything, all my stories, all my designs, everything falls underneath the Massive Swerve umbrella. I was pretty much thinking like I wanted to start doing my own books and printing them myself. So I do a print run of about 1,000 books, and I just sort of, like I said, I would do stuff that I was kind of, stories people would tell me, Burning Man stuff, kind of a lot of Bay Area type content back then. It's fucking my ass getting beaten down in Bangkok for some crazy reason. And sex police, that's just stupid stuff. It's not real. Yeah. But there's a kung fu sequence, yeah. This was Lupe Fiasco was this hip-hop artist, and he had a record called Food and Liquor. And this is one of those jobs where I did a bunch of work and then it kind of fell through. So I was more than happy to sort of print this in my own Massive Swerve book. So I got a bit of mileage out of it like that. Like this ghetto monster was sort of an image that I kind of, I used as poster images and stuff like that. So occasionally in the midst of a comic book, I'll sort of come across something which I think makes a nice poster image. This has been sort of tattooed on some people's arms and stuff like that. So that's when you know you've really tapped into it, when it gets tattooed on somebody. Here's the first installment of that Boy Zero story. Back then, these pages were really difficult. They were really slow finishing them. My knowledge of Photoshop was a bit limited. And I was still just trying to find the style and the kind of storytelling. Nelson Mandela. And just random little stories, So this is the Massive Swerve story. I was, like the film was sort of based on this story right here. So that sort of comes down to like what I kind of really want to do is I want to be in this middle ground between comic book and animation. I want to spend part of my time making comic books, and I want the comic books to act as the storyboard for the film. So I want it to sort of slot in naturally into the whole production pipeline. And because it's a comic book, the idea was that I could print the book and then hopefully make a little bit of cash while I'm working on the animation, and also sort of get the property out there circulating around. If you print it, it's kind of automatically copyrighted, and so it just seems a little bit more, I don't know, it just seems more legitimate or something if you take your idea and make a comic book, and then that was the idea, to take the comic book and faithfully animate the comic book every year. So, yeah, more Burning Man stuff. Okay, so I've got a bunch of these I got 3 of these books which I self-published. I self-published them because nobody else would publish them. I print 1,000 of them at a time. Once you've given a book away to your friends and your family, you still have 995 books you still have to get rid of. So some of these books have been to the San Diego Comic-Con about 6 times and back again. And so this is the second Massive Swerve book, and I was so careful about all the spell checking inside the book because I wanted to make sure that there was no stupid mistakes. And then when I got the books printed, I realized that I spelled massive with 2 V's. So, oh, this is funny. I should read you this. For the longest time, I don't know if you guys do this, but for a while there, I used to type my name into Google and see what would happen. And you guys don't do that? No. Okay. And I want a Wikipedia page, but I don't know how to do that. But for the longest time, this was the first thing that would come up, was this guy totally fucking, it was like the worst piece of, well, I'll just read it to you. This guy says, I went to check out Robert Valley's blog, albeit with a sense of foreboding that all I would see would be more empty, pointless, sexist, not particularly artful doodles. He continues, unsurprisingly, to pump out more of the same ridiculously dull, depressing, offensive wank doodles. Hurrah. And so I thought, oh, that's cool. I'm going to print that in my book. So any kind of scathing criticisms, if you guys are, if you guys put that online, I'll be glad to put that in my letters to the editor book. So, occasionally there's a record design, to a record cover that came up. This was for a reggae album that sort of had like a kind of dance side to it, and then it had like a down-tempo side. So this is the down-tempo side here. And that was fun. This is something I did for a book that was circulating around called Sketch Travel. So this book circulated around the globe, and there was about 50 artists that did like a page in the book, and then the book was put up for auction afterwards. So, and the guy before me was Mike Mignola. And I had all this anxiety that I'd be after Mike Mignola. And I'm not sure if Mike got the brief. I shouldn't say Mike because I don't know him, but he did one of these little drawings. It took him about like a minute to do it. And then he went, okay, send it off. And so I got the book feeling all this anxiety, like, oh no, it's Mike Mignola. And I opened it up and went, oh, it's horrible. And then I thought, I'm going to go to town on this next drawing. So that was a bit of a relief. So occasionally, my little Burning Man story, stuff like this. Okay, so those are my books. I do the books. Like I said, I'm compelled to do the books. That's a big part of what I do is making the books. I print a new book every couple of years, and I print off 1,000 of them, and then I try to sell them. It's a weird thing doing a book, because the whole time you're working on it and you're sending it to the printers and he's giving you like the proofs back and you guys are going back and forth, and then they finally get printed, and then the whole time you're like, I gotta get those books. I gotta get them. You want to get them, And then finally you get them, and then for me, I look at it for about a minute, and then it's like, now I gotta get rid of them. So there's like a minute there in between I got to get them and I got to get rid of them, where you're actually looking at it, and it's a pretty good feeling, but that doesn't last for long. But the thing was with these short books, or these books that I did, was they were full of short stories. And I was kind of advised by various people that I should do something longer. You should do something longer for people to really sink their teeth into. I like Robert Crumb, and I like these sort of short stories, and you can sort of slot these different characters in, depending on what the story is. And so that was kind of where I was getting my inspiration from in those early books. But, I was getting a lot of advice to maybe spin off into something that was a bit bigger. And so it was around that time that I had a friend, his name was Techno, and Techno was kind of featured in my last two books called Pear Cider and Cigarettes. And if you're familiar with that story, it's true. Techno was a friend of mine, and I went to China to try to help him out of a bad situation. But when it was the whole thing was all over, it wasn't really my intention to like, oh, I'm gonna do a book about this, or I'm gonna make a film and profit off of somebody else's life or something. But I was in London, and I was talking to my friend Hugo, and we were having a couple of drinks. And I told him the whole story from start to finish, like 25 years of history, and he listened to the whole story, and he went, oh my gosh, that's an amazing story. You should do something with that. And I thought, well, what do you mean? And he goes, you should do something with it. You make a book, like Persepolis, or one of those kind of books, like, those books are great, because it's a real story about someone's life. It's sort of biographical or autobiographical. And I thought, nah, stupid idea. And so, but he didn't leave it alone. He'd send me an email, or he'd phone me up, a few months later. And then one day, I decided to write the script down. And I'm not a writer. But what I realized when I worked on Tron is if you are the writer, you're in a really good situation. So I thought, I should try it out. So I wrote the script. And this is the original document that I wrote. It's a fucking masterpiece. And it all came out in one night. And I didn't write this story. I remembered this story. And I just wrote it down as I was remembering it. So that's the whole script right there. And so that script has been it's been what's been keeping me on the right track for this whole Pear Cider and project. And so after Tron was done, I wrote that script about 5 years ago. And it sort of sat around for a little while, but I felt pretty good about that script because it came out in one sort of, it felt like it was just like, came out like that. Even though it was a couple of 2-3 years since the events had taken place with techno, when it came out it was as so fresh, like it was all just as vivid as when I was telling that story to Hugo in the pub. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's weird I was still vivid like that. And then when Tron wrapped up, when they canceled the series, I thought, well, I guess I'm going to start working on my book. And so then I started doing some thumbnails. And these thumbnails are kind of typical of the kind of thumbnails that I would do working from a script. They're very small. They're like about this big a lot of the time. I draw them with a 0.3 pencil. After a while, they start to get a little tighter, as I'm getting more into it. But I'm showing you these because if I show you my film, you'll see, if you guys want to see it. No, but you'll see that the thumbnails, through the whole range of the methodology, you could go back to the thumbnails and you could see how close they are to the thumbnails. I really haven't veered off of these drawings at all. So I find that, I don't find them anything. It's just really helpful, So this was just the next stage in the process were the thumbnails here. So I spent about a month doing all the thumbnails for the book. And then that was that. I felt like I had a pretty good handle on things. Okay, so once those thumbnails were done, then this is how I laid out my book. And I laid it out like this because I knew eventually this stuff was going to be animated. So I set it up with this kind of extended letterbox format. It's sort of a little wider than your normal sort of letterbox, because I needed to figure out a panel size that would work so you get 3 tiers on the comic book. So it needs to be a little bit longer than an extended letterbox. So it's kind of a weird aspect ratio. And I did all the panels sort of in animation layout sort of mode. So everything's broken down into, it's different levels. There's foreground and background and overlay elements and stuff like that. So, you know, I'll show you sort of just with this drawing right here, kind of what the process is once I take that thumbnail into Photoshop here, because you know, like I said, I really want to maintain the look of those thumbnails as much as possible. Like, I'm obsessed with that. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it's got this quality that I like. So the first thing is, where's the line art? There's the line art right there. So there's the, without the frame, that's the thumbnail that I just scanned in right there. So, you know, the first thing that needs to be done is there's a lot of drawing with white to clean it up, you know, and sort of beefing up those lines a little bit. But you can see it's basically that drawing, right? And then, you know, with me, the first thing, he's got some vomit coming out of his mouth there. And then, you see, like, I struggle with color. That's my thing, is I'm not a colorist. So the way that I got around that is I do everything in black and white. And I make it work with the tones, is the first thing I do. And then I put the noise on. And and then, I don't know if you noticed with my book, but everything is blue and orange. Those are the 2 colors that I'm working with right now. I'm starting to introduce green, but I need to get a handle on that stuff. So I'm sort of easing into it. And so this is kind of the way I did this book. You know, like, again, there's the where's the line art? It's Lair City, man. Oh, that must be it right there. Well, whatever the case is, you get the idea. You know, with the the point. This is the point: is that everything's been laid out in a workable animation layout right here, and there's extra frame around the edges in case I want to extend the panel. I can extend it any way I want, really. So, you know, I don't like to lock myself in with the framing too tight. And so, remember that scene right there. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so then I go through all these panels, and there's probably like about 300 of these panels I do for 100-page book. Yeah, that sounds about right. 3 panels per page. So that's the way that looks. And then the next thing I do is book pages. There. Oh, it's numbered. That makes it easy. Now I'll take those panels and I'll assemble them like that. So I put the word balloons on after. I've got, you know, I just basically copy merged the drawing and then I put them in. Sometimes, you know, it doesn't work in the other one, so I'll end up coloring it here. But actually, I do all my color in this document, in the comic page document, is where all the coloring takes place. So in this case, everything's black and white except for the techno character, because if you're familiar with the story, he was suffering from liver failure and he had a very yellow complexion. So I thought that, you know, in relation to the story, I thought it would be an interesting sort of color idea if techno was yellow. And so, again, you know, this is, the color gets done in these panels. And the book has a very sort of, it's got the same layout on every page. The book is like the cinematic sort of, it's the storyboard basically, except it's a storyboard with all the color information in there. So I just want to emphasize that the comic book is just, it's part of the methodology. It's part of the pipeline. It serves a purpose. And so that's kind of the book. So I finished both books, and this is like the next thing was, I wanted to animate it, and I didn't know how to animate a movie, and I knew it was going to be a long movie. I did an animatic for the first half, and it was already 17 minutes long. And so I was looking at a 34-minute film, a 30-minute film, and it was in my experience, basically on every job that I had done, it was like this. We, the animators and the assistants, we make a pile of paper and we give it to somebody, and then they scan it, and magic occurs, and the next thing you know, it's on a screen, and you're pointing at it going redder or bluer or something like that, right? But all those steps in between, I wasn't quite sure about that. And so, but I really wanted to figure it out. So it was right around this time that Warner Brothers, on the heels of Tron, Warner Brothers phoned me up and asked me if I wanted to do a Superman cartoon for a Superman animated short for their DC Nation platform. And I said, no thanks. And I said, how about Wonder Woman? And he said, yeah, how about Wonder Woman and Superman? And I said, no thanks. So we just did Wonder Woman. And here was the thing, is I did what I always do. I sort of do the drawings, and I did all the layouts, and I did the backgrounds. But it still needed to be animated. And I had this image in my head of those old Warner Brothers cartoons, those little shorts, right? And I had this idea like, oh, they're doing it at Warner Brothers, you know? Like, there's guys in a room and they're actually doing the cartoons. And they're like, no. We don't do that here. We send it somewhere. And then it comes back like magic. And then you have phone calls, and then you ask for retakes and stuff like this. And I thought, fuck that. Because there's one thing about me, and I'm not saying this like I'm proud of it, but I'm a trench guy. I'm an in the trenches guy. I like production. I don't like sending the fun work overseas. I want to do it myself. Not by myself, but if I could surround myself with people and we could sit around with our feet up on the table and laugh about how fun it is and all this, would be great. But I don't want to, you know, because that's the way it's always been. With the Gorillaz jobs, we did it in-house. With the Beatles stuff, we did it in-house. With all the commercial work, we always did it in-house. So, you know, yeah. So obviously, there's you know, a pipeline where, you know, to keep the costs down, you send work overseas. And I said, no. Obama thinks it's a good idea if we keep work domestically. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I said, no, trust me. I know what I'm doing. And I went into my office and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And somebody, it was right at that very moment, somebody said, did you know that there's an animation function in Photoshop? And I said, what are you talking about? And then they pointed out the timeline on like Photoshop 5 or Photoshop 6 and newer. And then I was off from there. That's all I needed. The fucking timeline was all I needed. So the first thing I did was this Warner Brothers cartoon. This was this Wonder Woman cartoon. Oh, Jesus Christ. Where did it go? I gotta go back a little bit. Okay. It's only a minute and a half long, so fucking keep your shirts on. But it's on YouTube if you want to look at it. But you can see the effect of Clint Eastwood Gorillaz. I keep coming back to that. But that's the effect of Clint Eastwood Gorillaz. And if there's one thing I learned from working with Pete is you don't want to blow your load on every scene. You want to save it for when you need it because you want to have your weekends at home. You don't want to be sleeping under your desk because we're not teenagers anymore. I'm not. And so that was the really appealing thing about Gorillaz, is that you could really make something look really effective, but it looked like the people weren't sleeping under their desk. You know what I mean? And I think that people, at least I, looked at it and I thought, oh, that's clever. That's really cleverly planned out. He only really fully animated the scenes that really need fully animating, but the limited animation, and there was a lot of it, was done perfectly on ones a lot of the time. All the lip sync that was done was all done on ones. And so, you know, you're kind of watching it, and this is that pacing thing that he kept going on about, is you kind of lulled into this certain level of quality, and all of a sudden he bumps it up to the next level, and then he keeps building it, and it crescendos, and then it's kind of over. And so the pacing and the planning and the efficient use of, because there weren't a lot of people on that Clint Eastwood Gorillaz job. Pete Candelan animated that whole thing almost by himself. And he was never the same after that. something went, he started surrounding himself with people like me that were, I want to draw that stuff, you know? So I think he had enough of it. Because, you know, he used to say, we've only got one tank of gas. You know what I mean? And you could spend all your tank of gas in one place. And I think I spent my tank of gas right there. So I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, to be honest. Okay, so we finished. There was 2 people that worked on that Wonder Woman job. And so by this time, I had done this Disney thing, and I worked at Warner Brothers. And to be honest, I felt like I got chewed up by the big studio sort of experience in Los Angeles. And I liked the smaller studio, the Passion Pictures type thing. And so, again, it was around this time that another company contacted me, and they asked me if I wanted to do some animated shorts. I said, yeah, okay, and these ones are called Shinjuku. I'll just show you one really quick one right here. But this was right on the heels of the Wonder Woman stuff. And I'll tell you something. The idea behind this was, I told these guys up front, I said, I'm going to animate the layouts for my book and use them for your project, but I'm going to use it for my project later. And I'm only using this project as a stepping stone for my own project. And they said, what the hell are you talking about? But we had that understanding. So if you're looking at Shinjuku and you're like, that scene is in his movie, that's why. Because I've only got one tank of gas, basically. So it's just the whole thing. Yeah, it's 15 minutes. So it was right around this time I was starting to realize that I could pump out more footage than I had been previously able to when I was just drawing stuff on paper and scanning it, coloring it, getting somebody to composite it, and then an editor. Most of those Gorillaz and those kind of 4 to 5 minute jobs have about 12 to 25 people working on them. But I was realizing that if I do most of the compositing, I can't do all the compositing in Photoshop, but I can get it to about an 85 to 90% completion level. And then only then, if I need to, I'll go into After Effects and do stuff in After Effects, because I don't like After Effects at all. But if I need to, I can go in there. But most of this stuff is done in Photoshop. So I feel like, at the sake of sounding like I'm eliminating a lot of people from the pipeline, the fact is
shared space with 200,000 daily visitors.
I am, basically. Well, this is a job for somebody, right? So I was able to get like somebody else working on it. But on my own project, which had no budget at all, I couldn't really afford to have people working with me. I just was, I wasn't in that position. And I tell you, man, I went to the Canada Council. I filled out a Canada Council grant. I went to the National Film Board. I gave the guys some books there. And fucking, and anyways. And then I got some guy to talk to Netflix and all these other sort of, financing possibilities, and nothing. So I thought, well, I'm going to start my film. Now I think I'm ready. I think I got the books are done. I think I figured out the pipeline, and I got a bit of money in the bank, and I got time. So it was time to start working on the film. And I felt, okay, I don't need money from anybody. I'll just do it. If I was waiting around for someone to give me money to start my job, I could be waiting around forever. So I kind of felt like I'm just going to start it. So I started the animation about 2 years ago, and I finished it about a week ago. It's a 30-minute film. It was originally 38 minutes, but I was warned, that most people who are jurying short animated films won't even look at your film if it's over 30 minutes long. They'll just go, 38 minutes? Forget it. So I didn't want to be in that position. So I'm going to show you the film. It's already 8:44. I'm starting to get that funny look like I got to wrap it up here soon. So, do you? There's two things. I want to. Okay, there's a 2-minute. There's a 2-minute trailer that I put together. And here's something interesting. Now that I've finished the animation production, I've locked picture, which means that the edit's done. It's composited. It's all in the edit. The whole thing. I got the music all in there. I've got 18 songs in the soundtrack. Good thinking. And we've finally, there's a Passion Pictures. I'm working with Passion to help me on the back end of this stuff, doing the music licensing and the distribution and all this stuff. And this song on the trailer I'm about to play for you, to get the rights to use this, it's a song from Air. It's already 7,000 pounds. And there's 18 songs. But I was told that because I'm using it for multi-purposes, like for the film and also for the trailer, it's jumping the price up quite a bit. So we're just at the beginning of this part of the production, is figuring out all the music licensing, but so far I'm not really liking the way it's going. So I'm going to show you the 2-minute trailer just to sort of just get you guys in the in the spirit of the film, and then I'll show you the film after that. So this will be a good opportunity for you guys to see what 7,000 pounds gets you.
A year and a half earlier, I was on a plane to China. I was on my way to see Techno. He was at the military hospital in Guangzhou, waiting for a new liver. Techno's father sent me with 2 clear instructions. 1, gotta get Techno to stop drinking, at least long enough to receive a liver transplant. And 2, get him back home to Vancouver. Get Techno to stop drinking. That's not going to be easy, because that's what Techno really liked to do. Is drink and smoke and fight. He was in no condition to fight. He was sick. He was really sick. He was crippled from a car accident when he was 17. But that's not how he lost his big toe. He lost that in a motorbike accident. Yeah, he was broken, all right. What was he fighting for? What was he still doing in China?
I haven't even shown my mom that. You got a funny laugh, man. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you.
Again, just want to thank Robert for coming out flying out this morning to be here for this. This is fantastic. Thanks for everybody who came tonight. This is an amazing turnout. It's the biggest one we've ever had for Animatic T.O. I just want to thank Bento Miso for hosting the event here tonight. That was fantastic. It's a great venue and everybody loves it. Again, Canadian Animation Blog for recording this. This will go up online eventually, so if you want to check it out again and see some of the really hilarious moments that we got to see tonight, we can check that out. So again, check the Facebook page, Animatic T.O. There's going to be another event next month. And yes, thanks to everybody for coming out.
Here are some, these are some theoretical catchphrases, if you will, that project managers have put together who are way smarter than me and have university degrees and all that sort of stuff. But the first one is one that we deal with a lot on a day-to-day basis, and it's not what you think. Student syndrome doesn't mean that it only happens to students, or what I like to call is the road to hell. If we only had a little bit more time, think how much better that project or that shot or that design could be. Just need an extra day, just one more day. I can make it this little bit, and oh shit, no, I missed my deadline. Well, it's all right, it'll only be like just half a more day, just half a more day. Oh, I missed, oh shit. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on, which leads into scope creep. Scope creep, which is a term that's used in software a lot. We don't use it as much in animation, but you know, they also call it feature creep. This phenomenon can occur when the scope of a project is not properly defined, documented, or controlled. How many characters are we going to have in this show? What's the character density on a per shot basis? These are all kind of boring things that some project managers will talk to you about, but they kind of do make an effect. Like if you assume 4 characters per shot on an average of an 11-minute show, and you get a storyboard back and there's 12 characters per shot, well, you've just tripled the amount of work that somebody has to do. And it wasn't budgeted with that in mind.